Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have a full review of the Realme 12 Plus. Let's get started. This is a mid-range device. Its launch price in Mexico has been 8,999 pesos, that is approximately $495, but remember that the prices here are not the same as over there. It is always worth mentioning that in Mexico taxes are included. It has very interesting competitors in this price range because you start to notice some high-end features. In this case, we will also find some very outstanding points, but like all mid-range device, it will also have other points where it will be a little looser, so it depends on you as a user what you want to give priority to. Then in Mexico, it has a distribution through different department stores and also through Telcel. And that could also be the reason why the price is not as tight as we would like. Generally in realme it is going to be a curious thing because there are devices that are very competitive in price and other devices that could become more expensive than we would like. For example, consider that the Realme GT6T is available on the open market officially at a slightly higher price than this one is, but definitely there we are talking about a high-end device. So personally I would say that it is more advisable to acquire that model, but in this case it has a distribution in physical stores that could also be an important element for a good number of people. Then join me to know what it can offer us. Let's start by talking about the front design, where we are going to find something traditional. Honestly, it doesn't get to stand out too much in this aspect. It integrates reduced bezels, but we could not say that they are ultra reduced or something that makes it stand out from other devices in this category. In this sense, it complies well, although what we would like would be to find some Gorilla Glass protection or something special. But in this case, the manufacturer does not communicate anything about it. On the right side, we find power button along with volume buttons in a super reflective frame with a special finish. Although in this case, we are talking about plastic. It is not metal, but it looks very reflective and attractive. At the top is placed a microphone, then integrates a secondary audio output and also has headphone jack. The left side is completely clean, and in this profile view we appreciate its thickness, which is 7.97 millimeters. This can become one of its highlights if you are interested in a slim device. And at the bottom is the tray where we can place a SIM card, and there is another slot where we can place a micro SD or other SIM card. Although if you buy it with Telcel and some phone companies, it is likely that the second slot will be blocked. For the back cover, Realme assures that this device is inspired by luxury watches, as it happens in the Pro model, so in this case we will find a quite attractive design of this back cover. This can also be considered one of its strong points due to this decorative line that it has in the middle part. It definitely gives a very special aesthetic touch to the device, and this one invites you to use it without a case. But if you're going to put a case on it, I don't think it's a determining factor of purchase. The camera module also has a very prominent design, although in this case, unlike the Pro model, we do not find relief in the contour, but it still looks nice. Note that also inside the camera module it is able to project the lights in different ways, so this I insist is one of its highlights. Although while it integrates a very nice aesthetic, the resistance is not that high. It has IP level 54 water and dust resistance, so it will withstand simple splashes. Possibly if it gets into shallow water, it may possibly survive, but you can't submerge it deeper. It weighs 190 grams, and this one I have with me is the beige edition, but it is also available in green. The screen is 6.67 inches, a very traditional size in the smartphone market, and in this case it offers us a full HD plus resolution, 1080 by 2400 pixels, so it also meets what we usually see in devices of this price. It's a 120Hz AMOLED panel, it gives us super fluid movements, and in this case it reaches a peak brightness of 2000 nits when you're viewing HDR content. In this case I'm viewing one of those contents, so you'll notice that some areas of the screen are able to emit more brightness to give a much more realistic feel. So it really has good features on the screen, possibly one of the strong points, although there are more and more devices in this price range that integrate excellent quality screens as well. Having an AMOLED screen is also going to allow you to have very vivid colors and also good viewing angles, so that even viewing the content from some side you will still have a good display. You're also of course going to have very high contrast. So the screen is very bright for comfortable outdoor use, and it also goes down to a considerably low level for comfortable indoor or nighttime use. Although in this case in the accessibility options there is no extra dimming option that we do see on other smartphones. The display also has different color color calibration modes. It has a pro mode where there is the cinematic setting or a bright setting for you to choose exactly how you want the colors to look represented on this screen. Personally, I think the vivid setting it has by default is just fine, and it also has a color temperature adjustment on the screen. Of course, it will also integrate eye care functions where you can also enable a black and white view and sepia colors for comfortable reading at night. It also includes video optimizers through artificial intelligence, although it will consume more battery and few applications are compatible with this mode. And note that it also includes a bright HDR mode, which will make the screen even brighter when viewing this type of content. The refresh rate can vary automatically between 60 and 120, and it's also worth noting that realme incorporates a technology in this screen so that even when it gets a little wet, you can still control it and it doesn't go crazy in response. So I think that is also a section that we could consider as a strong point because few manufacturers integrate such controls. For the sound, the lower speaker will have higher quality. It has a sufficiently high bass frequency presence for the range, although it doesn't get to be very remarkable. But what really caught my attention was the volume. It is exaggeratedly loud. And on top it has two audio outputs, one that's on the frame and one that's on the earpiece for calls. So it complements the stereo experience well, although this speaker doesn't put out as strong of bass frequencies. Let's listen to a little test, though remember it's not the same as listening to it live. And in the audio software, we are going to find the all-reality audio technology, although it will be available only when you use headphones. Fortunately, in this case, it does support wired headphones, so they could give you a very advanced experience. And in this case, it does give you access to a 10-band equalizer, but again, only when using headphones. Fortunately, in this case, it comes with high-res audio, so it could also give you high-resolution audio when using headphones, both wired and wireless. Because in addition to the basic codecs, it also supports the LHDC codec, it also supports the LDSC codec, and also the aptX codec, so you have very good options for wireless high-resolution audio. The device integrates two microphones, one at the bottom, one at the top.
Esta es una prueba de audio grabada con el Realme 12 Plus utilizando sus micrófonos integrados.
Voices are captured well, although you can immediately notice that it has noise cancellation, so it is not a faithful recording, but voices are well distinguished. Below we will see a video recorded with this device in a very high volume environment. As you can notice, the device does not capture the audio in a 100% clear way. Some distortions are noticed in very noisy environments, so it would not be advisable to use it to record, for example, in concerts. The front camera is 16 megapixels with f2.45 aperture and fixed focus. In this case, it has some shortcuts like pressing the volume button down twice to enter the camera, although it goes directly to the city mode, which has some different tools, but either way you can get to serve, although if you wanted a selfie, you must first switch to photo mode before rotating. It also has another shortcut to draw an O on the screen and thus also quickly enter the camera, although both gestures are disabled by default and it is clear that you cannot use them if the screen is on. The front-facing camera can give us a considerably snappy experience, so it's easy to take pictures with it. You can also notice that it integrates a button to see the color filters that are available and also a button for the beauty options, which are many, to modify your face with different parameters. And you can take pictures by touching any part of the screen or also by showing the palm of your hand, which can be very useful when the shutter is hard to reach. Selfies from this device look detailed enough. I think you don't need much more level of detail. The result will be positive even from different distances. Even though it has fixed focus, even if you are a bit far away from the camera, you will still get a well-detailed picture. Although it is not a wide enough camera for excellent quality group shots, but I think it can also give you a good enough quality. In fact, it has a panorama mode for the front camera, although it's quite complicated to use, so it's likely that several areas of the picture will appear out of focus because of how complicated it is, but it can give you a very good level of amplitude compared to the normal mode. In very intense backlit scenarios, the preview doesn't look optimized, but after taking the picture, the result is positive in terms of light and shadow balance, although the shadow area loses a bit of color fidelity, but for this price range, I think it's good enough. Indoors, the photo also passes acceptable. The colors are not so accurate in this type of scenarios, but we were definitely talking about a scene without, which is the main thing in a selfie. I think it came out well. At night, we also have a good result. As long as you're in a well-lit scene, I think the detail will still be high enough, although not as high as in the daytime. And in night scenes, backlit, the result is good enough. Even if you use the screen to illuminate your face, I think it comes out an even better result. And if you use the night mode, it tries to highlight a little more details and eliminate noise, although it is still not able to balance very well the most illuminated areas, but we would demand that from much more expensive devices. Overall, it does deliver. The night portraits are also acceptable unless you get closer to notice more details. Then you will realize that it is not as detailed photography and has enough grain, but in general for the price range we can accept it, although it is not his specialty. And please note that in portrait mode with the front camera, it won't be able to detect the objects in the foreground, so you may get pictures with unnatural looking results. And even some areas of the hair also struggle to focus well, so you may get a bit cloudy results in this section. Therefore, it is not an expert. For the rear, we will find 3 cameras. The one in the lower left corner is the ultra-wide camera with 16mm, 8 megapixels and f2.2 aperture with fixed focus. In the opposite corner is the main camera, which is 26mm with 50 megapixels, f1.88 aperture, autofocus and optical stabilization. And finally, the camera that's in the other corner is 2 megapixel macro with f2.4 aperture. Consider it as a decoration camera, just like this decoration circle. So even though it looks like it has a super advanced photographic system, in reality it is not that complex, although the main camera sensor is quite modern, so let's get to know what it can offer us. Like any device, it has a little delay in the preview, but taking the picture looking through the sensor, you could capture the exact moment. It has a very slight delay, but I don't consider it to be a really serious delay. If you hold down the shutter, it takes a burst of up to 20 pictures. In burst mode, it does have a slightly longer delay and there aren't as many pictures, so it's not as useful. In the main camera, we will also be able to use the different filters and color effects plus beauty option, but in this case only with a slider. As you know, you can touch to adjust the exposure and focus, and you can also access the Pro mode, but before the Pro mode I tell you that in the urban mode are expressed focal lengths, so you have a little more professional setting, and you can even select zoom so that you touch a person and automatically framed. But within the Pro mode, you can edit more parameters such as ISO, which can go up to 6400, also the shutter speed, which can be up to 30 seconds. You have compensation, focus, and white balance, and you can also take raw photography, something that not all devices of this price offer. And as for the smart capture, note that when it detects a document, it will suggest you to enter this special mode where the device will be able to automatically trim the edges, but it will not allow us to add more sheets to the document, although a color enhancer is integrated to make it look like a much more advanced scanner. Unfortunately, it is also capable of scanning QR codes from the main camera interface. With the 50 megapixel mode, this device is capable of giving us photos with good resolution and good detail so that you can crop or extract photos from the main photo itself. In this sense, it does optimize this sensor well. In outdoor scenes, the ultra-wide camera looks slightly darker than we would like, and the colors are not as accurate, so it is a simple camera. In addition, we observed a bit of chromatic aberration at the edges and some distortions, confirming that it is a simple camera. The main camera captures much better quality colors and also details. In automatic mode, the pictures are 12.5 megapixels and definitely the result is positive. I really like this camera. Even at the 2x zoom setting, that is 52 millimeters, it still manages to retain good picture quality, so it could give you telephoto perspectives with good detail. At the 5x zoom, that's 130 millimeters, there are some settings where you start to really notice that it's digital zoom, but other settings where it retains a good level of detail. So at least I think it does get to take good advantage of this modern sensor that it incorporates. Here you can see another tour of the full zoom range that this device has. Definitely, the ultra-wide camera is the one that looks lower quality than we would like, and the maximum zoom that it supports is 20x. Therefore, it offers us a quality a little bit above what other devices in this price range offer. So it could be one of its strongest points. Indoors, the ultra-wide camera comes to behave with a good quality. It doesn't seem to suffer too much. In this case, it preserves colors well, preserves shadows well without the appearance of noise. Although the main camera does a better job defining details and also in color accuracy, so this main camera performs very well even in scenarios where it doesn't have so much lighting. In light backlit scenes, notice that the preview looks slightly overexposed, but the already processed result looks of good quality. Even the blue color of the sky is the one that comes through most vividly. It looks to me like a photograph that meets what one would expect in this price range. The ultra-wide camera also has this good balance of highlights and shadows in this result, although as I told you, the colors are not as accurate. Also in backlit scenes, the chromatic aberration could become even more revealed. At night, the ultra-wide camera performs quite simply. It doesn't draw too much attention to itself. If you use night mode, it will increase sharpness a bit, but it still doesn't recover much light or properly expose the brightest areas. However, the main camera does an excellent job even without night mode. Notice how the drops that were in this section look very well defined. Even the color and the brightest lit area is perfectly well exposed, so it's a very good level of photography. If you use the night mode, it's gonna bring out the details even more, and the darker areas will show a little bit more content. So yes, it's a device that takes good pictures in these lighting conditions. Even applying the zoom 2x, you notice that there is a very marked difference when you use the automatic mode and when you use the night mode. So night mode does work. And obviously, in much darker scenarios, the ultra-wide camera is not able to give us a good result. With the night mode, it improves a little bit, but it is best to take these pictures with the main camera to get the best detail possible. In motion photography, the ultra-wide camera performs well if you are in a very well-lit environment. The same will happen with the main camera if you have very good lighting, if it is able to freeze time. Even with the zoom 2x setting, we see the same behavior. For macro photography, note that the main camera can adjust its focus nicely, although you can't get that close. But if you use the 2x zoom, which maintains very good quality, I think you can get a very good level of detail in these pictures of very small objects. This would be the result that the macro camera gives us. I definitely don't like it because of the low saturation of the colors. These are other examples that the macro camera can give us as a result. Definitely not something nice. If the ultra-wide camera's width is not enough for you, remember that you can use the panoramic mode, and it seems to me that you gain a good level of detail. Plus, you already know that the main camera has better light and color capture. So I would prefer to take pictures with the panoramic mode instead of the ultra-wide camera. Although you don't have as much vertical range, but the result is favorable. Finally, for portrait photography, note that it has excellent foreground detection despite not including a depth camera, so it is able to keep the foreground in focus and blur the background. In fact, it does so with a very nice bokeh effect. So portrait photography I did like a lot with the rear camera. What I liked most is that it allows us to use a telephoto perspective, as if you had a 52mm lens. So the result is even nicer in this setting. Although it doesn't look that detailed, but if you don't zoom in to notice too many details, the result is definitely that it looks very nice, especially because of the excellent foreground detection it has. So portrait photography seems to me to be another one of those strengths that this device incorporates. For video recording, the main camera supports video in 4K height video, although the ultra-wide camera only supports in Full HD. The front camera is also limited in that aspect, and note that you can also use some color filters, although it is not possible to use them in the video. You could also use the facial beauty effect, but again, it is not possible to use it in the video. It also has a portrait recording mode, and finally the super stable mode, which is at the top. When starting a video recording, notice that it has a slider for zooming but no quick shortcuts to switch between different distances, and it also has a button to take pictures, another button to pause, and another button to turn on the flashlight, but you can't rotate to the front camera before you have your video recording. And in this case, it also has a pro mode for video recording, but it's hidden inside the movie mode. This mode will record in a 1:9 format, automatically enable super stable mode, and you have here again several parameters that you can control manually even while you are recording your video. The video recording in 4K will be of good quality, the colors look well defined. We are also going to appreciate a good handling of focus and exposure. It does not seem to have problems, at least in these scenes that are well lit, and obviously the level of detail in 4K is very much appreciated. Although in this case the zoom management is not as advanced as in photography, it allows us to go up to 10x but does not maintain as much quality as in the photos. Unfortunately though, the ultra-wide camera again looks several steps below the main camera, so video recording is not as recommended with this camera because it has less resolution and less accurate colors and other things. Also, you can't zoom if you are recording with this camera, as it doesn't dynamically switch between the ultra-wide camera and the main camera. In fact, in interiors, notice how the low quality of this ultra-wide camera for video recording, there is a lot of noise present and little detail, and with the main camera the color improves a lot, also improves the detail, although there is still a large presence of grainy, confirming that this video camera does need very well lit scenarios for a better result. In backlit scenarios, light note how this device still keeps overexposed some of the areas that have higher illumination, so in more extreme backlight will be less advisable to record with it, but if the backlight is light, could still be more or less acceptable what you can get with this ultra-wide camera, but the difference again will be very large when you record with the main camera. The result is much more advanced in terms of light and shadow balance. The colors are still much more accurate, so with this camera, if you could get to record comfortably and adequately in this type of scenarios, we do not notice that there are aggressive jumps in exposure, although the focus comes to struggle slightly, but nothing really serious. And at night, as you would expect, the ultra-wide camera has a huge presence of noise, and it will not be advisable to record with this camera. The main camera handles noise better. Curiously, in the indoor scene we saw a lot of grainy presence, but here at night it seems to me that came to better control this noise, although it is not able to balance light and shadow well in these complex scenarios, so if there is a very intense light present in the scene, it can obscure the rest of the shot, so it is not so advanced recording at night, but we could not get so demanding in this price range. The focus will handle it with good speed in this kind of aggressive movements, so there is no need to be waiting for it to refocus or something similar. Even in more subtle movements, it also manages to adjust this focus in a good way. And as for the stabilization, recording in 4K, you depend entirely on the optical stabilization because it does not have digital stabilization, so you can get to notice a lot of movements, so it would not be so advisable to record in 4K scenes of much action because they will look a little ugly. Even if you are walking with slight movements, it is very noticeable, and obviously when you are running, it will be even more noticeable. However, the device has a super stable mode, so you are seeing on screen the comparison with and without the super stable mode, although recording with this mode lowers the resolution to full HD but increases the frames per second to 60. It is definitely recommended to record using this super stable mode if you want to record more action scenes, and you can do it with either the main camera or the ultra-wide camera depending on what you prefer. Interestingly, this device also incorporates a portrait video recording where it will blur the background. It does it with a good enough quality, although if you are moving a lot it does seem that the effect is chasing you, but honestly it does it much better than many other smartphones, even when you show your hands if you get to keep them in focus, although it does not change too much the intensity of the blur depending on the distance, and also is not able to keep objects in focus, but at least all parts of your body, yes, although the result is only in HD. However, in this price range, it is not a common mode to see. It also incorporates a fast camera mode, although it is not stabilized and the resolution is full HD and not 4K. In addition, the most basic is 10x, which can still be too fast to record movements of people, but if you can get up to 960x with what you can record even spectacular landscapes, but if it is necessary to leave the device on a base if you want the best result. For slow motion, it has too many settings. It can be in full HD at 120 frames per second, which would be the quality that generally give you other devices at this price, and you will have a good result. Although in some settings the movement can look with interpolated frames, giving an unnatural feeling. Interestingly, you can also record in 240 frames per second, although this will be in HD only, but if you could get to have these nice results at the time of having these creative scenes. But what is more curious is that you can go up to 480 frames per second and the resolution is in full HD, because even the result will look more attractive than what it looked like with 120 frames per second. And lastly, it can go up to 960 frames per second, but only in HD, although in some of the slower modes it will apply a crop on the sensor that would force you to go further. The front camera has very pale colors, so the result is plain. You will even notice that it has no stabilization, and this would definitely be unforgivable. So while we saw a considerably good quality in the rear system, I think with the front camera the video quality will definitely be very simple. In backlit scenarios, you are also going to notice that it is not able to balance lights and shadows well, although this is a very similar behavior to what we see in other devices of the same range. Indoors there will be more noise and grain present, and again it is confirmed that the colors are a little pale, while at night the amount of noise intensifies, so it would not be highly recommended to record with this device in these scenarios, although in the darkest scenarios, if you are going to be able to turn on the screen to illuminate your face a little more and improve light capture. With this front camera you can also use the fast camera mode, although as I mentioned it is not very well stabilized, but it does not integrate front slow motion. What it does integrate is the dual recording mode that can be very useful, can be in split screen, and the resolution is in full HD, although it does not have very good stabilization when walking, but it does allow you to zoom so you can show something out there to your audience, and you also have the ability to record with this device. There is also a picture-in-picture mode that can be in different modes. It can be in a circle and you still have the zoom function enabled. It can also be in a box, and in both cases you can move the image along the screen, although it has a stop on the right, and to rotate the view and make the front camera bigger you have to stop recording and start it again. This device comes with Android 14 and realme UI 5. This is excellent news because it has the latest version of both cases, also as promised 2 years of software updates and 3 years of security patches, although it is not the highest in the industry, but at least if you have guaranteed that it will receive a few more years of life so that it does not become outdated so fast. In customization options, we will find the always on display mode where you can select some cover even with a Bitmoji character or some clocks of different styles so you can display on your screen when it is locked. You can also quickly configure the general colors of the system or also the shape of the icons of the quick settings, and has a function to illuminate the edge of the screen when receiving a notification, although it is not as useful or as showy as we would see on a curved screen. It also has smart sensing that will use artificial intelligence to detect gestures in the air so you can control your phone without even touching it. There are not so many compatible applications, but I think the most used in this gesture could be TikTok. Although in this case you have to have your hand a little further away than normal, and honestly you are realizing that you have not been able to detect it, so at least it seems that these gestures do not have such a fast response. You could also get very quick access to a QR code scanner by double tapping on the back of the device. It's not even going to have to open the camera, as you realize, so it can become quite a curious thing. Notice that in this case I am indeed pointing to a QR code, but again it is not able to identify it. There you go, it looks like the code shouldn't be that close, and this will work fine. If a call is coming in, you can also activate an option to just turn to look at your cell phone and the volume will go down, and there is a very curious feature of this device, which is to swipe up on the home screen to collapse all the app icons and be able to access even the ones at the top. Although you might have a bit of confusion with the gesture to activate the Gemini, then it can become a bit confusing, but it is definitely a gesture that could be considered very comfortable. In fact, it also has a one-handed mode, but it only resizes vertically, so items on the other side can still be very difficult to reach. It also has the smart sidebar where you can have a temporary storage of files or texts, or you can also access very fast to your recent files. This can be very useful so that, for example, you can attach an image to WhatsApp very quickly. In this sidebar, you also have some quick tools, including an on-screen translator, although it will actually open Google Lens, and you can also have quick access to the apps you want. Obviously, you can customize this by adding more tools or shortcuts to other apps, and these apps will open in a floating window mode, although not all apps are compatible with this mode, and note that it only lets you open one app at a time, so you don't have as much productivity as you might find on other devices. Note that Instagram does not support this mode, and neither does YouTube, so it is quite limited. It also has several varied gestures to control the device that we usually see also present in other devices, and within the photo gallery you can select several to create a collage or a GIF in a very simple way without installing any other application. The device also incorporates an application called Zen Space that would be to disconnect you from your work life and avoid that you are getting a lot of notifications or something similar. You could also initiate a concentration time for your studies. You choose which apps if you will have permission to use and which apps you will not, although they are very similar to the digital wellness settings. Finally, within the gallery, it also has an editor that includes an object eraser, although it is an eraser that does not yet use generative artificial intelligence, so you must mark specifically what you want to delete, and it will only use a pattern of filler elements, although the result is not too bad, but it does not compare to what we could have through generative artificial intelligence. Lastly, this device incorporates an optical engine on the Z-axis, so unlike other devices from Realme, OnePlus or Oppo that get to take advantage of the vibration engine throughout the system, this one has much simpler interactions, so it doesn't feel as premium in this regard. The fingerprint reader inside the screen supports up to 5 records, as you can see. Despite being an optical reader and not ultrasonic, unlocking is not so slow. The truth is that it works in a good way. In fact, you can get to customize the animation when you are unlocking, and also has a quick launch tool, so you have some shortcuts when unlocking your screen. These shortcuts you can customize and can be direct actions or applications. Then simply to unlock, you do not have to release your finger and directly appear these shortcuts available. The facial unlock is also available, but only in 2 dimensions, so it is not an advanced recognition. Something I do not like is that the security section is as if it were pure Android, but at the same time, while you are accessing these options, you will notice that in another section, if it is customized as realme UI, so it looks little worked software in this aspect. We will also find the extended unlock to keep the device unlocked in secure environments. This is a feature of Google, as well as the password manager, so if you have your passwords stored in Google, could also become easy to fill out this type of login forms. And the good thing is that if you verify through your fingerprint that it is indeed you. It also has a payment protection option, so that in sensitive applications you can have even greater precautions, and has very useful tools such as application locking, hide applications, a private safe where you can store files, and a system cloner. In fact, it also has an application cloner in case you find it necessary, and it also includes a children's mode that can be useful for lending your cell phone to a little one. You simply choose which applications they can use, and they cannot leave this mode unless you verify your fingerprint, and you can also access parental controls so that you can say whether or not they have permission to access the internet, and also if they have time limits for each session. Plus, you can automatically enable an eye protection mode, so it is a children's mode that is definitely very useful. In this case, it does not integrate a private VPN from Realme, and in addition to Google Play Protect that does not have a very high utility within the Security Center application, you can have another virus scan, in this case in collaboration with Avast, or also in the settings you can change it for Avira, so it has 2 collaborations with advanced cybersecurity companies, so you can choose which one you prefer to have this level of security. The battery has a capacity of 5 milliamps, and in this case the performance was more or less as expected. Running the drainer in the foreground gave us a duration of 4 hours with 10 minutes, slightly below what we would have liked, and with the draining application in the background while watching YouTube videos in the foreground it reached 4 hours with 36 minutes. But note that although it was in the background, the draining application consumed a good percentage of the energy, so Realme does not seem to have such a good optimization of the applications running in the background. In this case, fortunately, Unfortunately, it has two power-saving modes, a normal and everyday one and a much more extreme one for emergency occasions, where it also allows you to add applications that you consider indispensable. The charger is a super box of 67 watts. Fortunately, is included in the box, and in my test with 15 minutes recovered 36% of energy, with 30 minutes recovered 68%, and full charge the finished in 50 minutes. I think this is a strong section because it charges fast, plus it is a battery that supports more charge cycles than usual, and it also has intelligent charging, so if you are going to leave it charging all night, it can charge slower, and you can also leave it paused until 80%, which can be very useful if you go in the car and you always have it plugged into the current, so it has good mechanisms to protect the battery and take care that it does not deteriorate so fast. This device will have support for 5G networks, so you can get to have a very good download speed if in your country is optimized, although it does not have eSIM to add a mobile data service by scanning a QR code, so if you are traveling, you could not take advantage of that option. Fortunately, in this case, if you can choose which applications will be able to access the internet using your mobile data and which applications can do so only through Wi-Fi. And speaking of Wi-Fi, in this case, notes how it supports very high download speeds as it has support for Wi-Fi 6, so it is very fast in this section. It also includes support for Bluetooth 5.2, which is not the most modern, but it can still have a good level of stability. It will also include NFC, so you can make mobile payments using Google Wallet or other compatible banking apps. You could also take advantage of NFC to link to other devices. Obviously, it does not have FM radio, but it does have OTG, although you must turn that setting on separately. You can also project your screen wirelessly, and in this case is able to hide notifications or project with the screen off, so it is a good implementation, and obviously also integrates Android Auto, and in the sensors complies perfectly because it integrates a lot of sensors such as accelerometer, geomagnetic field orientation, gyroscope light, and also the proximity sensor is completely physical, so there is no drawback here. As for ecosystem, Realme has good devices with a large amount, although many of them also depend on the features of Google. So it is not an ecosystem that we could say that is very strong, independently depend on several things, Google as Google Fast Pay technology or Quick Share, but also integrates this technology called Multi-Screen Connect that will allow you to link to other tablets of the same manufacturer to use your phone directly from. It could also be synchronizing your content. Even this technology can be installed on your Windows computer to also have this ability to control your phone from your computer, but obviously require a separate installation, a little more complex. You must enable many permissions, so it could be a little complex, but it is appreciated that the option is available. In fact, also brings integrated connection to Windows in case you prefer to use this tool. That could be much easier to configure, depends on you as a user, that is what you want. But in this case, Realme still distributes any computer that integrates all these technologies, and the connection is much simpler as we see in other manufacturers such as Huawei or Apple. Then depends on many things of Google still. Also in the cloud storage and control of home devices will depend on Google, so it does not seem to have so much own development even in its ecosystem. Let's go now to talk about performance. In this case, integrates the Dimensity 7050 MediaTek processor. Is a considerably good processor, but best of all is that it incorporates 12 gigabytes of physical RAM, and you can have up to another 12 gigabytes of virtual RAM. Personally, virtual RAM does not seem useful to me, so do not consider that you have virtual RAM, but the 12 gigabytes of physical RAM should give us a good performance. We will try to check at a time. It took 2.8 seconds on average to open each application. I think it is well within the range, could be categorized as one of the most powerful devices, although I do not think it is the most powerful in its range. But if you get to have a processor that stands out, but I insist the RAM memory is the most interesting thing here, because with 12 gigabytes should not have any problem in opening at the same time all these 16 applications, and it seems that in this case, if it is fulfilling it, I have not noticed any restart of applications, although in many of the cases, just when I am saying that there are no restarts, there is a restart, but in this case has not been a problem. Reboot, but in this case has not happened. So I think the performance is pretty good on this device, especially for the RAM memory. If you are a user who wants to keep many applications open at the same time and do not want the device starts to get slow when you opened many items, this is one of the best options you're going to find. It also has 256 gigabytes of storage, although the unit that I have in my hands is 512 gigabytes, but the edition that is sold in Mexico is 256. Note that it does not have slot for micro SD cards, but I think that with 256 you have enough space, although I remind you again that if you wanted cloud storage you will depend on what Google offers you, since Realme does not offer you at the moment cloud storage, but I insist that with 256 gigabytes is enough. But now let's see how it behaves exporting a video with total duration of 1 minute recorded all with this device. In this case, we will use the 4K resolution. It is clear that it is a device that is not capable of editing with much speed video in 4K. The most advisable in this device will be editing in full HD. For games, the device has a specific application that will show you several tools that are available and will also allow us to explore more content. Even you can have here fast games that you can run without the need to download them to save storage in case you like the simplest and casual games. But if you are one of the more intense gamers, a little more intense games that you can play without downloading them to save storage. Gamers a little more intense in terms of graphics quality, remember that here also appear the games you have installed, and when you open a game will also appear the game engine options, where you will be able to select a high performance mode called Pro Gamer, or you can also access a power saving mode in case it is your priority. Interestingly, in this case now integrates the Spotify panel directly into this sidebar, so that from here you can access your music or your favorite podcasts while you are playing. Also integrates brightness control and has a focus mode in the game that will reduce distractions, disabling many additional things. In fact, there will also be an option to modify the style of the notifications in case you don't want the traditional balloons but prefer sliding strips. Also from here you can block calls, take screenshots or screen recordings, optimize the network to avoid latency, optimize the touch response of the screen lock, the rotation, and even cache the game so that the next time you run it, it can open faster. Although it could reduce performance in applications, it also integrates a voice changer specifically for games that support voice chat. It also has an option to intelligently adapt the resolution, but it is not compatible with all games. In fact, it also has a system monitor, so you can see the CPU and GPU consumption, as well as the status of the current frames per second and the current frames per second and the current frames per second of the game. The current frames per second, and also has a button with which you could dim the screen to download content without consuming so much battery. Also has a quick volume adjustment, and that would be basically all. As you see, is a very large suite of options that also allows you to open applications in floating windows, so at the software level the gaming experience is very good. In Call of Duty by default gives the average graphic quality at a very high rate and can even go up to a high quality, but if you go up to the maximum frame rate the graphic quality drops, so the graphic compatibility does not look very advanced. If you are very demanding in this sense, it is definitely better to look for other options, possibly with Snapdragon processors, since as you realize it does not support various special effects. So in this price range definitely you can find something more advanced in this sense, and already with the highest setting that supports this device, the experience was good. Very stable, as it was not a very complicated test. Considers that in reality the graphics quality is not so advanced, so that's why it will give you very good stability, although it will not get to give you a smooth experience as it is limited to 40 frames per second, but if for you this is enough, the experience will be positive. In the Legends game, we changed the automatic setting to a medium quality setting at 60 frames per second for this test according to its price. And in this case, the truth is that there is not much to say. The device behaved very well here. Yes, it was able to take it up to 60 frames per second with excellent stability, some low peaks as usual in this game, but nothing really serious. In fact, in this case, if you see a good optimization, so also the performance could vary depending on what game you're going to run, but in this case, the experience was very good. In the SpongeBob game, by default, it gives us the resolution and medium quality for our test. We only went up to 60 frames per second, keeping the smoothing enabled. Again, we had, I think, a good experience. I think it is not a bad processor. Just would also have to see if other games come to adapt to take full advantage of all the power that has this processor, because not being a Snapdragon processor, sometimes there are games that need a little more time to adapt, or maybe they will never adapt, is a bit of a mystery. But at least in the SpongeBob game, we also had a very good experience. I think it is not a bad processor. Just would have to see if other games come to adapt to take full advantage of all the power that has this processor, as not being a Snapdragon processor. Sometimes there are games that need a little more time to adapt, or maybe they will never adapt, is a bit of a mystery, but at least in the game of SpongeBob we also had a very good experience. The temperature I think is still well controlled. Is not a super cool device, but we must consider that we were playing with sufficiently demanding quality and still has a good experience. And finally, in Henshin Impact by default has the quality very low for the test we raised it up to low quality, leaving some settings on medium and going up to 60 frames per second, and despite having selected this quality, the device came to suffer a bit when it comes to maintaining a good stability, so it has several fluctuations. The highest it got was 39 frames per second, the lowest was 27, so it's not a disaster, but it doesn't maintain such a constant or consistent experience recording. The screen gets a bit slower and doesn't go above 25 frames per second, so the experience is going to be a bit more disastrous if you record the screen to have gameplays to share. But if you don't record the screen, I think it can give you a satisfactory experience. Obviously, it's not the most powerful thing in this price range, but it can give you a good gaming experience if you liked other parts of this device. But if your priority is the gaming experience, possibly if you get to have a better experience on other devices. As a conclusion, I think it is a balanced device, will offer us a very good rear camera. Unfortunately, the front camera is not at the same level, but it is complemented by a good screen. A powerful sound and software level experience will also be positive. Even the performance is also without becoming its highlight. So I say it is a fairly balanced device, but honestly in this price range, as I say, if I were you, I would invest a little more money and I would go for the Realme GTT that is available in free market, but that's up to you for now. We have reached the end of this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, you know you can tell us, and see you next time.